Hello, everyone. Welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McAllis. What a glorious Monday it is today here in the DC area. The sun is shining, it's crisp. Everyone's getting ready for the week of Thanksgiving to celebrate some traditional foods and family and friends, and everyone's in their hearts. And it is such a pleasure to have Dr. Nancy back on the show again. We're going to be talking about more on the master plant, medicines and all of her expertiseness and experiences that she has to share and her wisdom and plant wisdom to share with us. But in the meantime, I would just like to ask real quick as the show begins, would you please join us by hitting like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment, and hopefully you can leave us a question and maybe it'll get answered on another video. So for those of you who are on our social network of like Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, etc., you can jump over to my YouTube channel, Sandra McAllis, and then you can see faces and personalities, and it's better to leave your question there. I'll probably see it more readily, and we'll go from there. So welcome, Dr. Nancy.
Hi, Sandy. So I always enjoy being here with you.
Always fun. I'm getting so used to seeing your background and all that. It's just as warm and cozy, and I just love it. I'm getting kind of attached to it because we've been doing a lot of series, and I'm just so enjoying, you sharing your book, Master Plant Teacher. Right. This is a great book
Yes.
by Dr. Nancy. And of course, we'll have the link below and on where you can find her and order your books and all that good stuff. It's on audio too. So let's just jump right in here. Where
Okay.
do we want to go today?
Well, I have a number of bullet points I wanted to go over, and we might as well start with chapter one. And so there's all these nice nuggets of wisdoms within each chapter, and so I decided to go through and just pull them out and then read a few, and we can go through and discuss them.
The
Give
power
any
of
kind
antigens.
of yes. So that is the title of the chapter, as Sandy just explained. And so entheogens, also called psychedelics, is a newer word used in place of psychedelics to differentiate their use as medicines. Entheogens allow the ego, mind, personality, and body to step aside and allow the soul to connect in higher dimensions for a variety of experiences. The word entheogen removes the stigma associated with the term psychedelics, which gives proper respect and honor to these plant teachers. Entheogens produce altered states of consciousness or mystical states going beyond the third dimension, which leads to transpersonal and transcendent experiences. Psychedelic research over the years have found the benefits of utilizing the sacred plant medicines in mental health and medical arenas. Yet pharmaceutical companies are currently doing research and trying to create synthetic versions of the different plant medicines in order to purchase patents for mass distribution to the public in the future. There is a concern about psychedelic capitalism and what it will do to the indigenous communities being exploited by mass demand of these sacred plants that have been used for thousands of years. So let me stop here for a second because that brings up a point. Right now, we have a lot of people that's going into the Amazon. They've been going into the Amazon for many, many years, and they're finding more and more plants and different I don't want to say creatures, but they're creatures to us because we've never seen them before. All these different types of mammals and birds and all just kinds of lizards and things like that, that is just so, it's just we've never knew they existed. And so they're always finding new plants and botanicals and things like that. And we have a lot of corporations that's been coming in and buying a lot of the Amazon. And of course, the different governments just sell it to these different companies that the indigenous communities have lived on for thousands of years. They're just kind of pushed off their land, and they don't have a lot of funds. There's been a lot of donations that's been taken within the psychedelic community or entheogen community to try to help them fight their through attorneys, hiring attorneys to give them representation. But it's just no match to a lot of the corporations that just come in and then a lot of it has been actually, I guess you could say, bulldozed down because of cattle ranching and things of that nature. So basically, the Amazon is being exploited for a variety of different reasons, and it's actually the lungs for the planet. We get a lot of our oxygen there from the Amazon, and it's just really a sad case of what's really been going on. And I think more and more we're feeling the effects of the lack of vegetation on the planet just because it's just getting bulldozed down and paved over with cement. So I think that something has to change. Unfortunately, when people go into the Amazon and they cut down all these plants and vines and vegetation of all different types, it's not replaced, including the psychotropic plants. They're really running the risk of being over harvested and going into extinction. And that's what they talk about with, when I bring up this term, psychedelic capitalism. So there needs to be a replanting of these psychotropic plants. They're very precious and it takes many, many years for them to grow. And so without any plant replanting of them, we're going to run out of them. So that's what people are worried about right now is the extinction of these very rare, beautiful plants and the master plant teachers especially. So, I mean, all plants have value, but these are very sacred. And that's what my next bullet point is here. These plants are sacred and have spiritual powers, for they cause awakening to take place during the religious ceremonies and are not meant to be used for capitalistic purposes. Yes, it will help globally, yet mass harvesting will drive them into extinction. There needs to be a replanting of these sacred plants and preservation measures needed to be taken seriously. Currently, it is illegal to plant these sacred plants. For example, you can't plant these in your backyard. You will be arrested. Currently, the Amazon is being exploited and psychedelic plants are harvested without any seeding of new plants. People are going deeper into the South American jungles and cutting down every psychedelic plant they can find and selling them to the highest bidder. Entheogen is a Greek word meaning God within and is used in connection with entheogens because it allows one to have that mystical oneness with divine source. It shows our transparency without all the coverings, which is emotional, mental, physical bodies, to show our true divine nature, which is our soul made of source frequency. And I'll just say this last one, we can talk about this. The last portion of entheogen is gen, to mean becoming. Therefore, our mystical experience of entheogens would cause an awakening of revelation that God is indeed within us and are becoming this likeness of the divine. So I just didn't know if there was something that grabbed you there that you wanted to comment on. You're on mute.
Silly me. You were saying something about gene means something.
Gen, Jen,
Gen, yeah, like
back end of
entheogens.
entheogen.
So what does gen mean? Because gen comes after a lot of words, but what does it mean for the
Yeah,
plant
they're
medicine?
saying it's actually showing what's within.
Okay.
So it's actually, I think that's from the Greek, because I know what you're saying. There's a lot of different words, but they come from different languages. And so yeah, it's showing the nth neogen is in, en, and then theo means God, and gen is within. So it's the God within, showing the God within. your God-likeness, your divinity, your
Mm-hmm.
oneness with source, because you are a piece of source and you can't be separate from that which you are made of.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's showing our oneness with source. And so that's really the breakdown and definition of entheogen.
Well, that just caught my ear. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, so basic, like when you're doing these plants in a sacred ceremony way, you're just becoming closer and communing with the God source of you, of the all, but it just happens to be a catalyst through the plant medicine,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, they're
So
the
that is what I want to stress to everyone, that everything that is on this earth is made from God and has God in it. If you
Mhm.
want to choose that word, I use source creator, infinite source creator. I started using God again in the last maybe 15 years, for the lack of a better expression to others to understand who I was referring to.
Mhm.
But for about 20 some years, I couldn't even use the word. It wouldn't even roll out of my mouth. But at this point in time, becoming more neutral and seeing everything on this earth as in oneness, um, it doesn't matter how I explain it, or what words that I use to express what it is I'm trying to say, and on a deeper level. But these plants are just, I'm becoming more and more inquisitive about them because I'm learning so much more through you.
Mhm.
So keep going, keep going.
Well, you
Let's
bring up a
go.
good point about the usage of these in the beginning of my book. I think it's in the dedication where it says source that goes by 10,000 names. And
Oh,
yes, yeah, I think it's either in the dedication or acknowledgement where I explain that. And so it's interesting because I think that's a process because I try really hard not to use the word God in my books because there's so many um well, a lot of people could be angry at God, disappointed in God. We fought wars in the name of God. So
mm-hmm.
I use the word source, and people tend to really like that word. They connect with it because it's maybe more pure sense of the word towards that. So I only use God in the sense if maybe I'm paraphrasing someone else or it's a direct quote, or for some reason it just seems like that's the word that fits best. But most of the time it's divine essence, it's source frequency, it's there's all these different expressions to denote creator that but source I tend to use. A lot of people can resonate with that word, and so I tend to use that one. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that up because that is a good point. I mean, because when you say God, well, whose God are you talking about? Are you talking the Hindu gods? Are you talking about the and actually, people think that Hindu has all these gods, but actually they're just different deities. It's kind of like when Source has all these secretaries working for it, and that's what these deities are, different manifestation and expressions for God. And then same thing in the Egyptian religion. I talk about that in my first book, Our Divinity Revealed, where it ended up in the last dynasty finding out that that they thought that it was ended up being monotheistic, where it was just one God, and these were basically deities in the Egyptian religion that were doing the work of to help, in service to the divine plan. And so that was really revolutionary when they found that out, when they were able to crack the code. And I believe it was in the early 1900s or late 1800s when they cracked the code to the hieroglyphics. And they found that really it wasn't so much a religion that was fascinated with death as it was really it was religion about life, because they were not, the reason they were so into the afterlife is, and that's what we thought, and then when we ended up finding out that it was really the reason they were so into the afterlife is because it was so important how you live your life, and is what denotes your afterlife. And so that's why it was so important to live your best life, and in accordance to the spiritual principles. And so, really, if one wants to call themselves a Christian, then be the best Christian possible. Live the spiritual teachings of Jesus. If one wants to call themselves a Hindu, then be the best Hindu and follow the teachings of Krishna. And, if you want to call yourself a Buddhist, then be the best Buddhist possible and live your life according to the teachings of Buddha, whatever spiritual teachers, whether it's Guru Nanak or all these different amazing master soul teachers that have walked the planet is really, and many of them have said, don't make a religion out of me. That's one of the things Buddha said. Don't make a religion out of me. And they make a religion out of them. And then, the same thing with Krishna and same thing with Guru Nanak. It's like, no, follow the teachings. And I believe at the time, really, Jesus wasn't so much trying to start a new religion as he was trying to purify the one that he was born into. And that was the Jewish religion. And so it's very interesting. We have, and even today, we have Master Soul teachers walking the planet and really kind of reminding us, maybe not kind of, actually reminding us to live your best life according to the principles, spiritual principles, and therefore that will denote a much better afterlife. So yeah, I just had to kind of throw that in there. So anybody who's more fascinated into esoteric wisdoms, ancient spiritual wisdoms, that's I go into a lot of that in my first book, Our Divinity Revealed. So
Thank
so yeah.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the entheogens provide vision-producing drugs, and these sacred plants are celebrated by being on the planet. Entheogens impart mystical experiences during sacramental ceremonies. Entheogens allow participants to cross the veil into other spiritual realms and have direct mystical experiences, bringing insights and a knowingness of their true identity and oneness with God. The meaning of entheogens is being called to be more relevant, as in discovering God within, to be a closer description of what a participant discovers when going inward during an entheogenic session. There is a reverence by the shaman towards this divine essence that is in these psychoactive plants, for they allow entrance into other realms. A highly trained shaman knows these transcendent realms. Of course, scientists, doctors are perplexed as to the hidden intelligence of plants, for they have not developed a relationship with the plant kingdom and only want to grind them up, place them in a capsule, and sell them for financial gain. Is there anything you wanted to, anything that came up? Okay, we'll keep going. The Vegetalista shaman sings Icaros, songs of reverence, to the plants while harvesting them, while they are cooking them, while they are in sacred ceremony. Otherwise, the healing does not take place, for it has to do with the shaman's training and relationship with the plants. Around the world, psychoactive plants grow, and for millennia, people have ingested them. There are documented customs of entheogenic mushroom use from thousands of years ago in Siberia, India, Scandinavian regions, Lithuania, Greece, and many indigenous cultures. Iboga, psychotropic plant in Africa, and psychospiritual entheogenic medicine plant, ayahuasca, from Amazon areas. Peyote cactus with the psychedelic substance is still used today by North American Native Indians and indigenous tribes in Mexico and South America. In India, the plant Soma, Soma, was so revered because of its psychedelic properties and ability to create mystical experiences that the Hindu priest class in India declared it a deity for its ability to show divinity within. There is even Christian artwork from the early century AD showing Jesus and early saints in many churches with psychedelic mushrooms producing self-inquiry, expansion of consciousness, and remembering that one is an infinite soul. I go into this deeper into this book, Master Plant Teachers, about all the frescoes. A lot of them are in Germany and France, and there's a number of them that people come from all over the world to see these frescoes, and they have all these mushroom trees and mushroom plants and Jesus holding mushrooms. And there's actually one that talks about the blind man getting his sight back. And what was interesting is a new twist on this, or I should say, an awakening experience was when I was doing my research. They were like, well, if these are uh, expansive consciousness and vision producing and an awakening, wouldn't it be very interesting if really the person, we think of it as being a physical manifestation that his eyes were opened, but maybe because he had ethnogenic plant, that he had this mystical experiences, and then his eyes, he has this awakening, and therefore they're talking about that's how he got his vision back, or his ability to see beyond a third dimensional reality. So I thought that was very interesting. That's what grabbed me when I was doing the research, and I thought maybe that's what they meant. Um, so so yeah, I thought that was really interesting. A highly
It is
trained.
pretty powerful because if you think about our bodies, right? And our fascia, which is underneath the skin, and we're learning so much more about it. It's like the brain of the body. It has all these membranes and memory and information in it. And you can work on the fascia and release so much throughout the body, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so if you are doing, plant medicine, and then you're able to sort of go into the body as well, because you're relieving pain, you're kind of redesigning, rerouting, opening up pathways that could be blocked or twisted or stumped. You're opening those up. So I could see where, we could have physical sight, but we're also mostly focusing on the non-physical sight of awakening and being blind to what is right in front of us with the God source energy within these plant medicines.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought, when someone's eyes have been opened, I thought, well, maybe they're talking about something more deeper than just the physical eyes, being opened.
Yes, yes.
So, a highly trained shaman deals with the spiritual aspects of the participants in their ceremonies or works with individuals' illnesses and disease and that are spiritually imbalanced and need correction by healing from traumas, which will heal any physical ailment. For centuries, all shamanistic indigenous cultures have been working in the spirit realms to help souls in their human journey. Yeah, I just, something came to me because a lot of people think this is just ceremonial work, but really they work with so many different plants to heal all kinds of ailments. Let's say somebody has a rash or eczema or something on their skin, they're going to come up with a salve and lay it on the skin and maybe wrap it with some sort of plant leaves and things like that. So they do a lot of things. In fact, I had recently come in contact with somebody, and of course, when they hear about my work, they'll tell me if they've done ayahuasca. And this person was sharing how she had experienced ayahuasca, and I asked her what brought her to the medicine, and she said that she had this painful trauma and experience that she needed to get over. And it was the loss of a child. And she was so angry at God because she felt God had taken her child from her, why, all these things. And she just couldn't get beyond this trauma, this pain and suffering. And so she ended up going to a shaman and experiencing ayahuasca, and it completely, I think it healed, not just healed her, but it answered a lot of questions to her whys when she was on the other side. And she she recognizes the experience and the reasons why, and she's had other children since then. But I just, we don't even think about, there's so many different ways and reasons why people come to the medicine for healing. And so that would have been, emotional and mental pain and suffering that needed, that type of trauma needed to be cleared out. And so I think that it's just, I mean, we can't say enough about how sacred these plants are and how they've really touched people's lives in such a deep, deep way that maybe no other way can touch them. You can't always just take a pill from a pharmaceutical bottle and says, well, this is for your depression and good luck to you, and send them on their way with their little bottle. It's just, it's not a lot of times enough. And we can spend years and years and years. I'm not putting any, you know, therapy down, but a lot of times we can share our pain over and over and over so many different ways with different therapists, but and psychologists and psychiatrists and stuff. But is the healing complete? And she had tried all this, and it just wasn't. I don't think it went deep enough for her. And so thank goodness we have these different plants that can really bring in such a deep impact on our life and touch us so deeply that no one else can do this for us. So I just had to share that because I mean so many people when they've it's was in related to you know, my books, I being in publishing and things like that. There's a lot of things, this factors and people I come in contact with, and I just knew that it was Mother Ayahuasca that put us two together. And so it was, you know, just so many things with regards to publishing and the industry that authors have to do with distribution in their books and stuff. And I didn't even know. It's kind of like she shared with me when she knew that I had done ayahuasca and I was, you know, this book had been published and that type of thing. So yeah, I'm always amazed at all the different beautiful ways that these psychotropic plants touch people in such a deep, deep way. And it changes their life forever. I mean, this is and it just leaves such a beautiful perfume, you know, on
Mm.
the soul. You know, they just are like, oh, you know, thank you so much, you know, for these sacred, powerful, beautiful plants that hold an actual consciousness within them that is here to help. They incarnate into these plants to help humanity with our struggles here in the physical dimension. So
Yeah, and
I just
oh, so
go,
sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was thinking because, of how powerful these psychotropics are and what they can resolve and dissolve and help you live a more healthier, connected life. I was thinking about what we do when someone's not feeling well in our home, right? Whether it's a flu, a cold, a stomach bug, the nurturer will always go to the kitchen. And in the
Mhm.
kitchen, there are herbs, and call it witchery, call it potion making, but we pull together the foods that Mother Earth has provided based upon whatever that need is. It could be, a homemade chicken soup with a lot of long cooking, a lot of love and care. It could be ginger tea, sliced and boiled and added with things. It could be, homeopathy of any kind, oils, whatever it is, and we nurture whatever is in that moment of illness, right? But so why wouldn't we go deeper into the spiritual realms where we have a lot of turmoil and disconnect and trauma and nurture that with God's gifts from the earth? Because we have no problem going into the kitchen because going into the kitchen is a normal thing to do, right? It's an everyday a-okay thing to do. There's been so much woo woo and disconnect from using the psychotropics, and now that a lot of these studies are coming up and people are talking about it, and you and I are doing videos on it to open up people's minds. So if you've got things that you want to unravel, you know come out of the kitchen and go on a sacred journey and see if you can resolve and dissolve and become closer to your God source self. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are realizing these plants are more than we realize. And I think for centuries we'll still be learning about these beautiful, powerful, divine essences that we share the planet with. And like, you know, I don't know if we brought this up, but I just find it interesting that because I was wondering, well, how did humanity find out about these plants? And they said that the plants talked to the indigenous tribes and said, well, if you put these plants together, then this will heal this ailment and this will heal that ailment and stuff. So over the centuries, they've had to learn a combination of all these different varieties of plants and herbs and leaves and vines and things like that to what heals the ailment. So like I said before, I mean, shamans, we always think of just ceremonial work, but really a true, I should say, a shaman that's deeply, deeply trained is going to know how to not just work with all of these variety of different plants for healing, but will be able to go into these dimensional realms with the participants and protect them during their travels. They are very intimate in knowing these different realms. They've gone into them many, many times, and they've had to demonstrate this to a master soul shaman, their teacher. And so I think that I would just have to say that, you know, we always think of shamans as just doing ceremonial work, but it's way more than that. And it's a lifetime of work too. I mean,
Yes,
it's
and training and
when it's done.
skill and yes,
You have to go back
yes.
into the forest at least twice a year, I've heard, to keep this connection with the plants. The plants get very jealous. You know, you live in modern life, and so you need to keep that connection. And I'll go deeper into, there was a famous botanist, and he had this amazing connection with the plants. And he became so famous because for a variety of reasons, but one of them was because he knew so much about the plants. And he said, and they didn't know what his secret was, and it was because he was trying to tell the other botanists and other people that you have to develop a relationship with the plants, because then they'll tell you their wisdoms, but they're not going to tell you their wisdoms if you're not going to really develop this relationship. And isn't that true even in human relationships?
Mhm.
You know, you have to bond with somebody. You have to know that you can trust each other and that type of thing. And over time, then you develop this relationship, and then you can share each other's wisdoms and maybe things that are deep within you that you normally wouldn't share with just anyone. So I just wanted to since we were talking about that.
No, I think that's extremely important. I just do. But I was just seeing like, hey, it's so normal to go into your kitchen and whip up something
Mhm.
for what ails somebody. And maybe the next step is, okay, it's so normal to whip over there and get into some plant medicine for some other things that, you know, maybe you need help with. So
Yes,
I was
yes.
just seeing like you drive here and you get this, you drive there and you get that, then your pathway leads you to, you know, into the forest and into, you know, especially a sacred, you know, journey into the deeper parts of you. I feel like that's going to be very
That was
normal
a neat
moving forward.
connection you drew there,
Yeah.
going into the kitchen and then going further deep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was really
Yeah,
nice that
because the
you.
kitchen's very baseline. It's very okay. It's very well, that's normal. Of course, you go into the kitchen and make chicken soup or do this or that. Of course, you make ginger tea. Of course, you would, you know, get ginger ale or do this or that for somebody. I wanted to be like, well, of course you would go and take, you know, some sacred medicine and figure that out and have a better life. That's normal, you know. That's what I want to see.
Well, I think one day it will be considered normal. I think the
Yes.
stigma is going away, and I think more and more people are turning to alternative medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, the Amazon culture, in the Amazon culture, the shaman goes by the name Vegetalista because they work with different types of plants, and the name Curandero. Some plants are for healing and others are for awakening and spiritual growth. There is only a thin veil between the physical reality and the etherical realities. There is a portal in the center of the earth that will connect to the upper realms. There can be scenes of darkness and lower beings on an entheogenic participant's journey in the beginning, and then they move on to a more beautiful scenery and celestial essence dimension where messages can be accessible. The center of the earth is the first dimension visited, and then a participant travels beyond into cosmic realms in the universe. And we're going to go into this because this is covering a lot of information. The Buddhist belief system describes this as the bardo, Bardo, while one is going down into the center of the earth portal, the lower worlds, then upward onto a paradisical realm filled with transcendental mystical experiences. Spiritual dimensions do exist according to shamans all over the world, and their specialty is traveling and working in these other dimensional realities. Okay, now this one's this one's really deep. I have a little note here on this, and it talks about I'm going to actually share a personal experience. And usually I'm it's not that I'm guarded with them. It's just that sometimes it's just not appropriate to talk about some of these. But since we're talking about this, it's very poignant. Okay, so we're going to go to the first part. Yes, there is a very thin veil between the physical reality and these other dimensional realities. And there is a portal in the center of the earth that corrects. So, what happens when a lot of times people take these psychotropic plants or have these experiences, they can get trapped in these lower dimensions. So they'll say, "Oh, I had a bad trip." So there's a variety of different reasons of what's going on. And it's endless because it can be set and setting. It could be what their mindset was. Did they have a shaman that was guarding them as they go into these other dimensions and can kind of pull them out of these lower dimensions to move them up into upper dimensions? There's just so much. But when you're going, and this was interesting because one of my in my sacred ceremonies, because I knew so much about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and they describe the Bardo experience. And this, I would say, verifies that a lot of the monks use plant medicine, because why else would they talk about this? But and it's not, and when they're saying, oh, that's when somebody passes, well, it's the same when you are leaving this dimension and going into the other dimensions, because you're dying to the third dimensional reality, that dimension, and you're moving into these other ones. And so, in a sense, it is a death that's taking place. We call it the ego death because it's just temporary, because the ego is, the third dimensional reality is the realm of the ego. So what will happen is a lot of times people will have these, they're in sacred ceremony, they've taken the medicine, and they're having this experience of going through the bardo, but they're not familiar with the bardo and what that is, and having these experiences. So it can be kind of frightening because you can see a lot of these creatures or some of these things in these lower dimensions. Yes, they do exist. And I'll give you one of my experiences was I was going immediately as I was having the experience. I knew immediately. I was like, "Oh, this is the bardo that the Tibetan monks talk about." And so all these, and I didn't even look at all of the what was around me. I just felt a lot of darkness. I knew I was in a very dark place, and I just kept radiating out love. That's all I was doing, is just radiating out pure love. And I was just wanted to send this love out to all of these different souls and manifesting in different forms. And therefore, all of a sudden, I found myself in like this dungeon, and it had like the torches on the walls, and it looked very, just medieval, almost even pre-medieval. And then I realized I was in this prison, and there was all these cells. And then there was one person that was there that was kind of like the guard, I guess you could say, and all the cell doors were open. So I walk up to him and I said, "Where is everybody?" And the guard looks at me as if that, "Why are you asking me this?" He was saying, it kind of took him back, and he says, "Well, don't you know?" And I said, "No, what?" And he said, "Your love healed them. Your love freed them. That's the power of love." And I was just like so taken back, because I wasn't even trying to, it was just pure radiating out love. There was no agenda. There was that's because I knew that's the transforming power of love. So for anybody who finds themselves in this situation when they're going through a sacred ceremony, just radiate out love. And you'll hear other people even talk about this, where they'll say, "Oh, I had all these creatures around me." And some people say they were mythical creatures or what have you. But then when they radiate out of love, they change the dragon into this beautiful white swan, or these beautiful, that it was almost like their nature came out, and it's like they purified them. Their love purified them and transformed them. And or you'll hear someone have said, "Well, a lot of times maybe it's their fears that they're dealing with as they're going through the bardo. And so that love can transform that fear. And so there's so much going on in these mystical experiences that a lot of times people don't know how to unpack this, or they don't know how to handle all this stuff. And so that was just something I wanted to share because it, people can get trapped in these dark realms, and what ends up happening is they can't get out, and they feel trapped because they don't know how to get out, and they don't realize um, there are ways that you don't have to stay in these realms, but you have to go down to the center of the earth, that portal, and then it goes down, and then it shoots straight up into these upper dimensions. And that's just how we can get out of this physical reality. Some people don't necessarily experience the bardo. Not in all of my sacred ceremonies did I experience it. You know, it was that particular time I did experience it, and I think Spirit wanted me to have that experience. So, and maybe it was just to have a better understanding of the bardo. Maybe it was to heal some of these souls, even though I didn't realize that. I mean, that could have been part of it. But and then there was another time I wasn't. It's kind of, I laugh because I had a friend, and she it was my birthday, and she came over to visit me, and in my little goodie bag of for my presents and stuff, there was this it was wrapped in aluminum foil, and it was a little brownie, and I was like, oh, that's really cute. She says, oh yeah, I make them up sometimes. And so well, what ended up happening is, and then on her way out, she says, oh, by the way, that's an edible, and there's some THC in there. And I said, well, how much do I eat? And she says, oh, I eat a whole brownie, and it was like a little square. And she says, and I sleep like a baby. So I was thinking, well, who doesn't want to sleep like a baby, you know? So I ended up that night just cutting it in half and just having half of it. And well, let me tell you, I was up, my heart was racing, my brain was racing, and I think there was quite a bit in there. And so I ended up, I just couldn't get comfortable. I mean, it was just one of those things where everything was racing, that I felt this, that was pretty powerful amount apparently. And so I laid down, and I was just trying to calm myself. And the next thing I knew, I find myself in a very dark realm, and I have all these people around me. And it was almost like it was so dark that when I was standing there, the light that's within all of us, it was radiating out. My light that was coming out of me, I think, was lighting this very dark realm, and all these people were around me. But I didn't feel safe, and that I wasn't prepared. That was part of it. Is when you go in to take these plants and these essences, you have to spiritually protect yourself. You have to be ready. And so I didn't think, because I was thinking I was just going to take a little, piece of this brownie and go to sleep. I wasn't spiritually prepared. And this is another thing too that people need to realize. This isn't just about like getting your trauma healed and that type of thing. This is, so there's more to this. And so because I wasn't spiritually prepared, and I found myself in the dark place, I was trying to get out of this dark realm. And so all of a sudden, this person comes up to me, and it seemed like they were somebody of somewhat in charge. And I was not interested in having a conversation. And so I was like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to get out of here. And, because I wanted to move up into the upper realms, thinking maybe there was a message for me or something like that. And talk with some other souls at higher levels. So the person's like saying, well, I really would like to talk with you, because, and I guess it was the light that attracted all these other souls to me, and therefore this person. And I really was not interested in having a conversation. So I'm kind of really just saying, I just want to get out. And so the person says, well, my name, and then finally I said, okay, what's your name? And he said, my name is Thor, Thor. And I, it's actually, I really wasn't prepared that to speak with Thor because I thought he was mythical. I didn't think he was an actual real person. And so if anybody knows about Thor, he's the Norwegian he's a man and he has like the sickle in his hand or like the hammer, I should say, actually the hammer. And he says, well, actually, I'm in charge here in this particular lower dimensional realm. I'm actually in charge down here. And so then he caught my attention. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll talk to you now. And so I don't know what he wanted to talk to me about. So then I laid back down because I was so anxious. I was just walking around the bedroom and then I laid back down in the bed and then I ended up falling asleep. And when I woke up the next morning, I do not know on my conscious mind level what the discussion was about. So I don't think it was for my conscious mind to know. I think is was something that we went into a place where we discuss things that's beyond the mind. So my conscious mind and my subconscious mind don't have a record of it. Maybe my subconscious mind has a record of it, but it was not for my conscious mind to remember the conversation because I can't recall it. So again, I can't overstress that you spiritually have to protect yourself. You have to prepare yourself for these journeys. And so when somebody just takes something and then they have these experiences where they find themselves in these lower realms and they say, oh my gosh, this was terrible. I had a bad trip. I went to these dark planes and dark realms and there's all these creatures and people and things, and I don't think they understand what's really going on and the significance of how you really have to protect yourself spiritually. And so, and you need a guide to be there, and that's where shamans who are highly trained to work into these realities, these different realities and these different dimensions can help you and get in and out and navigate through these and that type of thing. So, and that's not a lot that's talked about. And I share these personal experiences because I think it can help people realize the significance of how important these mystical experiences are and what you're doing and how impactful they can be. And so, I mean, thank goodness I had years and years and years of research and study as being a spiritual student for at that point 40 years. And so, you know, it's just, it really helped me have a deeper understanding of what I'm trying to do when I leave the physical reality and I go into these other dimensions. So I think it was a good experience for me to have. Looking back, that just if somebody hands you an edible, be prepared because it might be powerful more than you realize, and you have to just prepare yourself spiritually that you may be, you know, taking a journey. And THC comes in many different levels.
Milligrams.
Yeah, milligrams. And
Yeah.
but I have to say, they even THC, I had two very, very deep mystical experiences with THC. So don't underestimate it. It's if a plant wants to talk to you and a plant has something to tell you and a plant has something to show you and the plant has something to teach you, it's going to happen. You know, these plants will come into your life and you'll have these mystical experiences and they will add to you. And actually it's all part of our growing and expanding experience, but I just can't say enough about how the spiritual protection is definitely, you know, needed and to be taken seriously when working with these sacred plants because they'll take you to some of these amazing dimensions and have these experiences that if you're not prepared, it can actually be quite frightening. And but then, you know, I think it's spiritual protection is important.
Thank you so very much. Well, here we are at the end of our episode already. We're going to have to continue again. Dr. Nancy, I want to thank you so very much for coming on again and sharing this very important information about plant medicine and what it can do for you and how sacred it is. And guys, we have other episodes prior to this one, so please go back and listen to them all. I think you're going to find a different relationship with this information with each episode. And in order to join us on each episode, please remember to subscribe, to like, to share, to leave us a question. Dr. Nancy, anything else you want to add before we go and have you back on to continue with more?
Oh, yes, there's always more. I'm looking forward to being back with you in the next episode.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Remember, keep it spiritually simple. Thank you, Dr. Nancy. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.